Deep in the basement of the British Museum in London, a 4,000-year-old clay tablet sat completely ignored for over a century. Museum staff had coated it in protective resin, labeled it too fragile to touch, and moved on. It was just one of 130,000 ancient tablets sitting in storage, most of them never read, never studied, and never thought about twice. Then, in 2019, researchers used a type of camera technology originally built for NASA, one that can read surfaces without physically touching them, to finally see what was written on it. They expected to find something routine, like a list of grain shipments or temple donations. That's what most of these tablets contain. Instead, they found something that apparently made the lead researcher quit his entire career. The tablet describes beings from another world who created humanity, left Earth thousands of years ago, and promised to return. It gives a specific astronomical event as the signal for that return. When researchers ran the astronomical data through modern software, the result was clear. The lead researcher, Dr. Michael Westera from Oxford University, published the findings in an academic journal, then retired suddenly 6 months later. When someone emailed him to ask about the tablet, he replied with exactly 4 words: "We translated it correctly." After that, he stopped responding entirely. His 2 co-authors have also refused to discuss it publicly. One of them, when pressed, said only that the translation stands as published. Interpretation is beyond our scope. That's a strange thing for an archaeologist to say, since interpretation is literally their job.
To understand why this tablet matters, you need to understand something genuinely strange about the Sumerians, the ancient civilization that lived in what is now southern Iraq around 4500 BCE. They basically appeared out of nowhere. Most civilizations develop slowly and gradually. You can trace their progress from small, scattered villages to more complex societies over thousands of years. Hunter-gatherer groups slowly settle down, learn agriculture, develop tools, build larger communities, and eventually create systems of writing and government. That process normally takes millennia. The Sumerians skipped all of that. One moment, there were scattered groups of simple farmers in the region. Then suddenly, there was a complete, fully functioning civilization with a written language, advanced mathematics, sophisticated astronomy, city planning, large-scale farming systems, metalworking, and legal codes. No awkward developmental phase, no gradual progression, just an instant leap forward.
Archaeologists actually have a name for this puzzle. They call it the Sumerian problem, because no satisfying explanation exists for how it happened. That level of knowledge and organization should have taken thousands of years to accumulate through trial and error. Here's what makes it even stranger. The Sumerians themselves explained where their knowledge came from, and they were remarkably consistent about it. Their ancient texts say it was given to them by beings called the Anunnaki, a word that translates roughly to those who came down from the sky. Not the sky as a spiritual metaphor or religious poetry, the actual physical sky. These texts describe real beings descending, not divine visions or symbolic stories. Their historical king lists, documents recording every ruler of ancient Sumer, describe kings who reigned for thousands of years before a great flood wiped the slate clean, after which human kings lived normal lifespans. The texts record this transition as straightforward history, not mythology. Their astronomical knowledge is also genuinely difficult to explain away. The Sumerians tracked the planet Venus so accurately that their calculations are only a few hours off from modern measurements across a 500-year period. They described Saturn as having rings. They understood that the sun sits at the center of the solar system, roughly 4,000 years before Copernicus officially worked that out. Their star charts reference planets that shouldn't have been detectable without a telescope. The mainstream academic explanation is that they were simply brilliant observers who figured this out on their own. But the sealed tablet complicates that explanation considerably. The tablet, catalogued as MS-3848 by the British Museum, was written in a language mixing two ancient dialects. The hidden text was completely invisible without special equipment. Using different wavelengths of light, infrared and ultraviolet, the NASA-developed imaging technology made the ancient writing visible again for the first time in thousands of years. What researchers found was essentially a star map combined with a very precise countdown. The tablet describes a specific arrangement of planets. Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars aligned in the constellation we now call Aquarius, while Venus sits at a particular position near the Pleiades star cluster. It also references the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes thousands of years to complete one full cycle and changes which stars appear in the night sky over long periods of time.
Then the text states, "When the wandering stars align in the house of the water-bearer, and the bright one stands at the shoulder of the seven sisters, the path opens. The Anunnaki who departed in the time of great waters shall return as they promised." Researchers entered this description into modern astronomical software, the kind used by NASA to calculate exact planetary and star positions at any point in history, past or future. The results were striking. This exact planetary alignment last occurred around 3100 BCE, right around the time Sumerian civilization suddenly and inexplicably appeared. The next time it happens is 2029. In the published academic paper, Dr. Westera included a note that was unusual for a scientific journal. He wrote that the astronomical precision found in the tablet was far beyond what the Sumerians should have been capable of achieving with their available technology. No reasonable historical explanation, he wrote, could account for this gap. Put simply, they shouldn't have been able to calculate this, but they did, and we don't know how.
The tablet goes beyond astronomy. It describes what happens in the lead-up to the return, and more importantly, what the returning beings will be looking for when they arrive. It mentions something called the Old Blood, family lines stretching back to a time when the Anunnaki reportedly interbred with humans, creating hybrid descendants who ruled as priest-kings over early civilization. The Sumerians tracked these bloodlines obsessively. Their most famous literary work, the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest written stories ever discovered, describes its hero as literally part divine. Born from a goddess mother and a human father, Gilgamesh possessed superhuman physical strength, lived longer than normal humans, and had knowledge beyond ordinary men. The text presents this as straightforward biology, not poetic exaggeration. The Sumerians also described physical objects called the Mi, devices that apparently stored advanced knowledge covering astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, metalworking, and law. These weren't described as ideas, traditions, or spiritual concepts. They were physical objects that could be stolen, hidden, transported, and fought over. Multiple Sumerian stories center entirely on conflicts over who controlled these objects. The sealed tablet references them directly, saying that the returning beings will carry the Mi of renewal, the patterns that remake what was broken. The tablet also revisits the Great Flood, a catastrophe described in Sumerian texts thousands of years before any biblical version existed. What stands out about the Sumerian flood story is how specific it is. It names real mountains, gives actual time frames, and describes the boat's dimensions in detail. More than 200 completely separate flood myths exist in cultures around the world that had absolutely no contact with each other. Historians generally explain this as exaggerated memories of local flooding events. The Sumerian version's precision makes that explanation feel insufficient. According to the tablet, the next flood isn't a punishment. It's simply part of a regular scheduled cycle tied to the Anunnaki's return. The tablet doesn't rely on a single signal. It lists backup indicators, things that happen in the period leading up to the return. Earthquakes increasing in frequency and strength. Long-dormant volcanoes becoming active again. Rising sea levels consuming coastal cities. A disease spreading silently through populations via the air. Critics immediately point out that these descriptions are vague enough to fit almost any era of human history, and that's a fair criticism. But the tablet adds a specific mechanical explanation. These events aren't random natural occurrences. They're caused by the gravitational pull of Nibiru as it enters the inner solar system. A planet large enough and close enough could theoretically disrupt tectonic activity, affect global climate, and interfere with Earth's magnetic field. This is where an unexpected scientific discovery becomes relevant. Mainstream astronomers have consistently maintained there are no unknown large planets in our solar system. Everything has been mapped and accounted for. But in 2016, researchers at Caltech published evidence suggesting otherwise.
They noticed that several distant objects at the outer edge of our solar system were moving in unusual ways that only made sense if something very massive was gravitationally pulling on them from even further out. They called it Planet 9, an object estimated to be roughly 10 times the mass of Earth. The researchers were careful to say this is not Nibiru, but their discovery raised an uncomfortable question. If there's one large planet we didn't know about until recently, could there be another one we still haven't found? The tablet claims Nibiru doesn't approach from the direction astronomers typically watch. It comes from above or below the flat plane of the solar system, angles that receive far less attention in standard sky surveys. Almost all of the unexplained astronomical observations reported in recent years, unusual infrared signatures, slow-moving dark objects, have come from the southern hemisphere. Each time, the official response has been to attribute them to equipment malfunction or human error.
Were the predictions right before? In the 1970s, an independent researcher named Zecharia Sitchin published a book called The 12th Planet, arguing that Sumerian texts should be taken literally, that their descriptions of gods arriving in flying craft meant exactly what they said. Academic linguists heavily criticized his translations, calling them inaccurate, selective, and unsupported by proper scholarship. He was widely dismissed. But Sitchin made specific, checkable predictions based on his reading of those texts. He said science would eventually discover an unknown planet in the outer solar system. In 2005, astronomers confirmed the existence of Eris, a large dwarf planet beyond Pluto that hadn't been known before. He said the Sumerian texts pointed to deliberate genetic modification of early humans by external beings. In 2003, the Human Genome Project identified sequences in human DNA that don't follow the gradual evolutionary mutation patterns seen in other animals. These segments appear to have been inserted rather than naturally developed, though mainstream geneticists have other explanations for this. Sitchin died in 2010, before the sealed tablet was ever translated. The text describes, with remarkable specificity, exactly what he had argued for decades. The most unsettling part of the tablet is its final section. It describes the criteria the Anunnaki will use to judge humanity upon their return. If the children of clay have risen to the stars and speak across the void, they are ready for the next ascension. If they still war among themselves and poison the garden, they are marked for another cleansing. Children of clay was the Sumerian term for humanity, beings their texts describe as having been genetically engineered from earlier hominids combined with Anunnaki biology, originally built as a labor force to mine gold. The Sumerian texts are surprisingly direct about this. The oldest confirmed city in Sumerian records, Eridu, sits near what are now known to be some of the oldest gold mining sites in the Middle East, with radiocarbon dating placing mining activity there as far back as 6000 BCE, long before any known civilization should have had the technical ability to extract and refine gold. According to the tablet, the returning beings judge humanity on two measures. First, technological achievement, specifically whether humans have reached space and can communicate across long distances. Second, moral development, whether humanity has outgrown constant warfare and stopped destroying its environment. On the first measure, we pass easily. Humans have traveled to space, communicate across the entire planet in real time, and have sent probes beyond our solar system. On the second measure, by almost any honest assessment, we don't. The tablet describes two possible outcomes based on this dual evaluation. Ascension, another intervention into human genetics, upgrading biology, extending lifespan, and unlocking mental capabilities that currently lie dormant. Guided evolution, rather than the natural kind. Cleansing, a hard reset, a significant reduction in population, the collapse of existing power structures, and a small selected group of survivors starting civilization over from a new foundation. The Great Flood was the last cleansing. The tablet lists fire, widespread disease, and catastrophic atmospheric events as alternative methods available for this purpose. Notably, the tablet doesn't specify which outcome is coming. It only confirms that the evaluation is on the schedule. The simplest explanation is that this is ancient poetry being wildly overinterpreted by people who want it to mean something dramatic. Humans are pattern-seeking by nature, and vague prophetic language can be made to fit almost any situation with enough creative reading. But a few stubborn facts make this harder to dismiss than most ancient prophecy stories. The tablet's physical authenticity is not disputed. The British Museum verified it. Scientific dating confirmed it was created in the early 2nd millennium BCE, thousands of years before any of these theories existed as cultural ideas. The resin seal protecting it was recorded in museum records from 1876, which means no modern manipulation is possible. The astronomical alignment is mathematically real. It isn't invented or selectively chosen. The planetary configuration the tablet describes genuinely occurs in 2029, and it genuinely last occurred right around the period when Sumerian civilization made its unexplained leap forward. And the researcher who translated it walked away from his career immediately after. Whatever he found in that text, it was apparently enough to make him stop talking entirely. The tablet ends with a note added by a different hand, a scribe who felt compelled to personally record something he witnessed. I saw them in the 14th year of King Ur-Nammu. 3 watchers descended in the night, silent as falling stars. They looked like men, but stood taller than any warrior. They examined our grain stores, our temples, our star charts. They said only, "The cycle continues. We are not forgotten." That was written around 2100 BCE. The tablet was sealed shortly after and sat untouched for 4,000 years. It was opened just in time for the next cycle. Whether the Sumerians were recording real events, preserving instructions they'd been given, or making the most extraordinarily precise lucky guess in human history, the alignment itself is coming regardless of what anyone believes about it. Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars in Aquarius, Venus near the Pleiades, 2029. We'll find out soon enough. If you've watched this far, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments what country or city you're watching from.